Okay, it's March 11th. This is the Community Preservation Committee, and I'd like to do a little roll call to order, starting with Sue.
Oh, before I get my headset connected, Sue Felshen, Planning Board representative.
Yeah, good. John,
John Kratzley, Select Board appointee.
Paul,
Paul Bone, Recreation Commission appointee.
Ed,
Ed Larner, Housing Authority appointee.
Diane,
Diane Proctor, Select Board appointee.
and I'm Eve Eisenberg, Select Board appointee. And we have a pretty short agenda. Would anybody mind if I just push the minutes to the front? I think they've been Sue Felshen and approved by everyone. I mean, read by everyone, I'm assuming. Does everybody get a chance to review the minutes?
Actually, Sue didn't have a chance to review them
Okay,
this time.
should we wait? I'm sorry, Sue, I jumped ahead.
I was thinking I can't remember if I reviewed them or not. I guess I didn't.
January 14th? Would you
have
like
no
some
idea.
time to review them?
Well, or I haven't even read them, much less reviewed them. So if the committee wants to go ahead and vote on them, go ahead. And if I'll abstain, and if not, we'll take it up later.
Well, I think we have a quorum without you. I suppose we could push forward, but when's do we have one more meeting, Anne? I think in April.
April, is it 1st or 3rd? Let me see.
I think it is. So in that case, maybe I will let Sue get a chance to get her eyes on these, because I appreciate Sue's editorial view on things that get into our permanent record.
Yeah, I have the first.
Yes, April 1st.
Oh, is it a joke? Ha ha ha. Okay,
Eve, can I just make a comment?
of course.
Now, and at the end of section 3 on the regional school committee presentation, where we explain the committee noted that as a valuable project, but it was a question of timing and fairness. I think that's true, but I think it was a question of whether it met our criteria overall. I mean, I haven't gone back to the video, so it may be more than timing and fairness, because there were a number of criteria that were in our acceptance policy. So I'm just suggesting that maybe there's more to that particular deliberation than timing and fairness. Just I don't know if
I completely agree, Paul. I think that it was more about our process. And so we'll just put that bug in Sue's ear when she reviews them, and we'll get a full review and vote on them on April. But that's a good point. Yeah, you're right. Any other comments on the meeting minutes for our committee secretary?
Just a question.
Yeah.
Until we've approved these minutes, they're not available to the public. Is that correct?
Well, they're on the meeting documents right now as a draft.
Yeah, because I've been hearing complaints that things are slow on being, agendas being, available and so forth. So.
Well, that you came after, Diane was sort of noting the same thing, and I think it might be useful to have a link to the agenda. I don't know if we could do this, but to have a link to the agenda on the same page that has the meeting documents. We could review what the website looks like to see if it makes it easier to navigate, maybe.
Wait, it's not a link to the agenda that we need. It's a link to the present documents, meeting documents. But you've just given me a neat way to do it, so I'm feeling much more comfortable now.
Okay. Okay, and maybe we could talk about that later too. But I definitely want to I'm excited for the second piece of this agenda, which is the report regarding a policy for reopening applications if there is excess funding after round 1 of awards by John Kratzley and Sue Felshen. And it's a tiny little half a page, really. So if you would mind, I would love for John, would you mind reading it to us if you've got it in front of you?
Yeah, I mean, conceptually, I think what I read is also useful to think about conceptually, because the first sentence basically asks that creates language by which we decide whether there is extra money. So it says, following the final vote and the distribution of funds for whatever fiscal year it is, to approved applicants and into other categories, the CPC, and now here's an important decision for us to make, shall or may. Shall meet would mean that we need to, we would every year take a look at this as sort of as a requirement. May would mean, I think someone would say, gee, looks like there's extra money. Do we all agree? So anyway, shall or may meet and determine if the available state and local fund calculations indicate that an adequate amount of additional funds are available to allow new applications. So sentence one gets us into the business, either by requiring it or as an option. We
So
will-
John?
Yeah.
So I mean, could we say instead of allow new applications, allow one or more applications? Because
Of
it could be
course.
one application rather than new
Sure.
applications.
Yeah,
Would
yeah.
suggest that we're tying our hands and only if they're applications. So
That sounds fine. I mean,
Okay.
this is certainly open to
Yep.
people changing it, disagreeing with it.
Are you,
Anyway,
are you inviting comments as we go along here, John, or you'd like us to wait?
I would
thought-
like us to wait. I would like to read
Yeah.
through the whole thing because I only glanced at it so far today, and I would like to
Okay.
think about this with you. So
Okay.
let's read through the whole thing, and then
All
we
right.
can go back and
All right.
have comments
so
on each sentence.
sentence one, we either shall or may decide that there is actually an existing amount of money. Sentence two, if the CPC determines that an adequate amount of additional funds is available to allow one or more new applications, the CPC shall also determine if sufficient time exists for notice, hearing, and consideration of new applications, of one or more new applications, prior to the date set for the close of the annual town meeting warrant. And this is something that Sue and I worked on, and I think we both are in agreement that the timing, the second sentence, creating the need for us to determine that timing works, does have to complete to get into the warrant. And
Right.
so we would know the warrant closing deadline on every given year when it is. So then the third sentence says, if the CPC determines that an appropriate schedule can be established for the timely determination of one or more new applications, each shall be considered using the following guidelines. And this is where it seems to me we could have no guidelines. We could have these 6 guidelines. We could add one or more. But anyway, number one, applications must comply with the filing, site visit, and deliberation deadlines set by the CPC for one or more new applications. 2, applications must satisfy the requirements and regulations of the Community Preservation Act and the Concord's Community Preservation Annual Plan. 3, new applicants must explain why they did not or could not file their application during the normal CPC application cycle. Applicants seeking additional, because I think we have to realize by doing this, we're going to get folks that are new and we could get people that want more money.
Right.
Applicants seeking additional CPC funds, and that's the second group, people who want more money, must explain why they did not seek these additional funds during the normal CPC cycle. All applications, and again, you could must or may, there's a choice there, accompanied by supporting documentation from individuals, organizations, and town officials. Applications, one or more new applications, however you want to say, should have broad community support. 6, the CPC may reject applications because there is insufficient time to properly review the application, regardless of other qualifications. And Sue should sort
Yeah,
of
Sue, do you
add-
have any additions to that, what John just stated?
Yeah, a few things I thought of after John and I last spoke. So first of all, rather than saying a specific fiscal year, we would have to come up with some generalized language having to do with either the current cycle or I'm sure there's some way to phrase that that's according to CPA language, and maybe can help with that because I haven't had a chance to go read anything to figure it out. Second of all, rather than say decide that, shall determine, wait, where was it? It was decide that. Where did it say that? Oh, I'm
Uh,
sorry.
The first sentence,
Shall, no, that's actually okay. Never mind. If we say are available to allow any new applications, I don't think we have to say one or more applications anywhere else. I think that follows. That we can be simple and just say applications. Second of all, third of all, whatever I'm up to, in the first sentence, it ends with to allow new applications. Rather than say are available to allow new applications, we should phrase it in some way to say that a significant amount of additional funds are available, because what if it's reopened applications?
are you saying
Uh,
instead of an adequate amount of additional funds? It's
No, I was saying, why say new applications? Because it could be additional funds are available to allow new applications, or additional funds are available to allow existing applications to increase their ask.
okay. Any other comments, Sue?
One last one, we could simplify number 2 and number 4. No. What about saying applications must comply with all ordinary requirements for in-cycle applications other than deadlines? I think that might be a little bit simpler than number 2, because it doesn't constrain us to having said anything about the CPA or our annual plan versus any other rules and regulations that might exist anywhere else.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sue, would you do me
that's
a
all.
favor and
I
make a
will
note of your
email that.
comments? Yeah, great. We're
Yeah.
gonna go to Paul.
Yeah, so I have a few comments. First of all, adequate amount or sufficient amount. Do we need to say more about that? I'm not exactly sure what that means, and maybe we just wait to figure that out, but does that mean, what does that mean? Is it,
Like, do you want a number? Is that what you're saying?
well, yeah, I mean, we could get an application for 5,000 or 500,000. What are we, when we look at the amount that's available, how do we characterize that? What's the adjective we need?
Well, we would be making the decision to go to step 2 of a scheduling without knowing how many applications were coming in. So I thought sufficient or adequate would become a judgment in, deciding under sentence 1 that we were going to move into sentence 2 with a schedule.
Yeah, and
So,
like I said, we won't know if they're sufficient or adequate until the applications actually come in. So, I mean, that's okay. I'm just questioning that, whether that's going to give us any heartburn. Probably not.
I actually had a suggestion, an alternate suggestion earlier, which was to phrase it as, if the CPC judges that there is an excess of funds on hand that could lose significant value due to anticipated inflation.
Ooh.
Because that it still is squishy as to what significant means, but it means that we're not just saying, oh, look, we didn't get money, and so we're just gonna make gobs of work for ourselves for no particular reason. It's saying, if we have a real reason to get this money out the door, even though people didn't bother to ask for it, why would we even do that? So I don't say we have to do that. I'm just throwing it out there as partially addressing Paul's comment and being a little more firm about why we would put ourselves through so much extra work.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
perfectly happy to leave it like it is. Just it creates some ambiguity, but it also gives us some flexibility. So I'm okay with that. Let me give the other comments. We can go back. The close of the annual town meeting warrant. So when we considered on February 4th, when we considered the last application, one of the reasons we gave was because the warrant was due the next day. There was an observation that the close of the warrant wasn't due for another 2 weeks. So do we want to specify the closure date or the filing date where Anne has to submit the application of the warrant?
Wait a minute, and can you put the text back on again? I thought that what John showed was something about that it included a guideline about we have sufficient time to review the application. Because if somebody submits something the day before the warrant closes, there's no way the CPC could review that in
No,
time
no,
to
Sue, I
give.
think
No,
you,
no.
you weren't at that meeting. It's a difference
Oh.
between the close of the warrant article and the filing deadline. We were the day before the filing deadline. And so that's what Paul's point is.
Yeah,
Oh,
is it,
I see.
the filing deadline was February 5th, the closing was February 19th. So which do we want to specify here? I don't know. I would suggest maybe the filing date, but
I prefer
Well,
the warrant, so.
The filing date's a suggestion. I mean, of course, the town really likes that because it makes life easier with having town council review things. But the state law is closure of the warrant. And since we have built in, well, we have to have enough time to look at this, that includes the time it takes town council to look at it.
but we're going to know if adequate funds exist in September. So, right? Or, after we get all the applications.
Oh, wait. Oh, you don't mean the filing deadline for the town
No,
warrant. You mean the filing deadline for applications, right?
No, I'm here. So Anne has to submit this. She's wants to comply with the requirements, so that they were due on February 5th. The close was not till the 19th. But we're going to know if we have adequate funds, in the fall. I mean, well before that.
Paul,
So-
I'm going to suggest that this determine if sufficient time exists will include in that calculation the filing deadline and the close of the annual town meeting. And just leave it flexible and take that into consideration with
Okay.
that without announcing the filing deadline specifically, because it's kind of fungible. Does
Okay,
that make sense? But I
yeah,
know
I'm
you have
good.
more comments.
I'm good with that. The last comment I had, number 4. Applicants seeking additional funds must explain why they did not seek those funds. If I'm an applicant, I would say, well, I didn't know there was additional funds available. Is that a sufficient reason that, I asked for 250, but I should have asked for 400, but I didn't know it was available. Is that a sufficient reason? I'm just maybe yes, but John, I don't know what your thoughts are on that. It kind of leaves the door open for.
No, I thought, and again, this was designed with a fair amount of discretion for the CPC to make decisions. And we would be judging each new applicant on their reasoning, and we'd judge each old applicant on theirs, and we'd probably wind up like we do with the first round, making some adjustments and compromises where you might not get everything. You're a new applicant. Maybe you're more likely to get everything if it's in our range. If you're an old applicant, you might not get, you might get what I think Paul used to call a haircut. So
Yeah. Okay, no, I'm good with that. I just sort of in reading it, I said, gee,
Yeah.
is that
That's interesting, Paul. Thank you.
yeah,
it's flexible. I think all this gives
yeah,
us more flexibility, which I think we need. Okay, that's it for
Then
me.
we're going to move to Diane's comments.
Thank you. I only have one, and that is that I am puzzled by and would wish to remove on number 5, application should have broad community support. I don't think we have any way of judging that. And so I think that, of course, we don't want to, we would always either unconsciously or consciously take that into account. I mean, if somebody said, came forward and wanted something that was clearly unusual, and that the neighbors would object, or there would be a lot of questions as to why in the world would CPC support it? I mean, I just think that I think that presumes a knowledge we simply cannot have. And I
And
would,
now I remember that was what I was suggesting merging. If we took number 2 and number 5 and replace them with applications must comply with all ordinary requirements for in-cycle applications. Well, our ordinary form says, give us letters of support and indicate what community
Right.
support and outreach and everything you have. And why should these new applications have a lesser or greater requirement for that.
Yeah.
Well, that is my sensibility as well. Well said. Thank you.
I like the idea of striking clause 5 as well. Sue, did you want to add to that?
No, but I wanted to add 2 additional comments.
Oh, more comments from Sue. Yes, let's have them.
Yeah, because I keep thinking of new things. Okay, so first of all, the very first sentence begins following the final vote of the CPC for distribution of funds. But when the application deadline closes, we have a fair idea of what the sum total of requests are versus what the amount of actual funds will be. We don't have an exact idea of what the exact amount of funds will be, but we have a reasonably squishy idea. And if we see that there's a huge gap, why wait until after the final vote to reopen the process? Would we want to either say after the closure of the acceptance of applications, if it is seen that there's the money gap, or would we want to write it into our own policy that if it looks like there might be a big gap, we'll let people know that maybe we'll reopen the process, but no promises until the final vote. This is all very squishy, and I'm not sure we want to do it. It seems to me, why would we not even tell people until the final vote and then make them hurry up and trip over their feet if we already knew when the application deadline passed that we were going to have a very unusual situation like this year where there's gobs of extra funds. And also my second comment is, if I was a housing committee, one of these open-ended committees that desperately needs gobs of money to do an uncompletable task, I would start overshooting and I would say, hi, we're the Affordable Housing Trust and we would like $10 billion, but we'd be happy to take less.
Yeah,
I'm
that's a
just
good
saying
point.
that would be the smart move for them, because they could always take less and they could always use more.
I have
Because
an
other
idea
than that,
about,
their answer to why didn't you apply for more money, their only answer could be, well, we didn't want to be greedy.
Mhm. Yeah,
Okay.
I have a thought about your comment, but I would love to hear what John is about to say. I
No,
suspect he'll address it.
I was only going to respond to Sue that what I hear you saying is that we broaden the discretion. We broaden the timing discretion for when we would make this decision, that we would have more leeway to make it early or to not make it early.
Hmm.
You're taking out you're taking out a firm a final vote sort of line in the sand, and you're saying, no, well, we should have something even broader here, and maybe let us decide much earlier that we're gonna create a process. I just thought it made sense to get the final vote done, and let that be our line for looking forward. But if people want more discretion, Sue's got a point that we could open that we could take this up as a deliberative matter right after we look at the first round.
And we could also make it, 3 steps: the initial filing, the initial application deadline, and then between then and the final vote, we say, we're giving you notice that we may reopen the process, and then following the final vote, actually reopen the process if it happens. Because then in a year where lots of requests get made for lots of money and we know there won't be any left over, people would know not even to think about it.
Okay, Paul, did you want to comment on this thread that we're talking about, or make a different comment?
No, this thread. So let's think in the future about a normal year that we don't have we don't have tons of money available. Normally we're going to have some extra money available, but at that point, we're not going to know if it's adequate until we actually take a final vote, because there may be applications that turns out eligibility we can't fund. So in a normal year, we may squeak by as we have but we won't determine if there's adequate amount until we take that vote. So, I mean, right now it looks like, I don't think we can judge this policy by our current situation.
It's a good point, Paul. Yeah, thanks. Diane, did you want to add to
Yeah.
that?
Yes, on the same thread. I think that what we don't want to do is to establish late applications as in a normal process. And so I think that we don't, at the first, we have to get through our deliberative process. We have to determine how we're going to distribute funds. And we know if we have a little bit extra, we can always add to an application. If we think it's a valuable thing to do. We often have to pair applications, our Paul's haircut. We've often had to cut monies down and say, we can't give that one this much, but we can, distribute. So I would like to make this an exceptional situation. In exceptional circumstances, I would love to see it start that way. In exceptional circumstances, when the CPC finds itself. Because otherwise, what we're really saying is that our process is our process is kind of a shadow. We do it, and then we turn around and we do it again. And I don't think that's a habit into which we want to get. I don't like our hands tied, so that when something like what comes up, that we can't respond. But on the other hand, I'd like it to be really an exceptional circumstance.
Sue, are you still on this thread, or you want to bring something else up?
Yeah, directly on what Diane said, I just want to remind everybody else that when John and I were chosen to work on this, my position then, and it really hasn't changed, is we really shouldn't change anything at all. This is so unusual that we have extra money and town meeting is 2 months late, which it won't be for another 125 years maybe. And inflation is vicious all at the same time, that it's adding in this whole new possible process that future versions of the CPC will have to think, oh gosh, do we need to worry about? It's a lot of extra work for something incredibly rare. So others may disagree, but there it is.
Okay. Does anybody else, Ed, we haven't heard from Ed, or does anyone else have any comments on what we've been talking about, or these 5/6, I guess we're down to 5 now, stipulations and a paragraph? Anyone else? Because Burton has something to say. Anyone like to hear what Burton has to say?
Sure.
Here we go. With respect to the proposed policy change, I like the substance of it, but I do wonder how it fits in with the existing special application process described on page 13 of our procedures manual. Would this new policy be intended to kick in as part of the regular application process in those years where there's unallocated money left in the CPC funds, when there's still time to review the application before the town meeting warrant deadline? But we would otherwise also keep this existing special application process, that is page 13, to handle extraordinary requests like land purchases that may come up at any time of the year? Or would the new policy replace the special out-of-cycle application process that exists today? And he says, I would prefer that this new policy essentially be a coda to the existing regular cycle process, and that we keep the existing special application process because the latter may be needed for emergency projects that we cannot process in time for the warrant. So actually, I thought the same thing. I think what he's saying is that page 13 here is, pretty good at capturing a lot of the emergency circumstance that Diane was talking about, like in special cases only. And I just have a problem with the one criteria that our most recent case kind of offended. And I wish that we could massage these criteria a little bit on here. But I do like the idea of using our new paragraph from John and Sue as a coda added on to the end of that. I just don't know if it needs to be quite so big. Sue, do you want to comment on Burton's thoughts?
Well, it brings up a question I've had. I thought the current out-of-cycle process is to allow any time of year. Suppose someone gets a land purchase opportunity in May and it's now or never. Now, if I understand correctly, not only would the CPC have to review it, but there would have to be a town meeting vote to approve it, and that would cost a bundle. But if it was so important to the town, we might actually proceed with this entire process. But the new proposed process is only for the shockingly rare circumstance where we suddenly discovered people hadn't actually asked for our money, but we hadn't closed the warrant yet and thought we had enough time to look at a
So
bunch
do you
of
see it as
proposals.
an addendum to the existing?
No, I see them as two completely different circumstances. One for land purchases at any time of year under any circumstance if those criteria are met, and the other for just this window of time between the application deadline and enough time before the closing of the warrant or filing deadline, whichever.
Okay.
So it's a good
John?
question that Burton asks, but I do think that
Yeah.
they're unrelated.
Yeah, you can call it a coda, you can call it a separate specialized situation. But I always thought when I was drafting that this was accompanied the other approach, that they live together.
Okay, that I think does answer, the both of you I think have answered Burton's question is whether it's supposed to replace page 13.
No.
And I don't think it should either. In
The-
my
the-
mind, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think the goal was to address the situation that I think we all felt very uncomfortable about recently. Probably one of the rare times that we were completely divided. And yet I think everyone, however you voted, would like to not have to be in that situation again. If we could.
Absolutely.
John, did you have a chance to think about where in the manual we might stick a paragraph or two such as yours? Would it be under?
No, I did not do any of that. Would it go somewhere near Burton? What did he reflected on page 13, where
Well,
this
page
other policy?
13 is the special application process that the oh my God, the toilet building. What are we actually calling that? It's not a toilet
Amenities building.
Thank you. The amenity. Thank you. The word amenity slipped my mind, but the amenity building
Toilet building.
was trying to get in with the special application process, which is, as Sue noted, really meant for capturing land, selling land at the last minute.
That's right.
But it's also, you know, I don't know, maybe a hard eye on the special application process is you could argue that it's just for like quick land purchases. And the housing trust has the same problem, which is why we have a housing trust, I suppose. So, okay, I like the idea of another sort of cracking the door open to allow another committee in the future to reopen the process at some point in time to look at another application. My only comment on this was that I don't think we should allow people who've already applied to ask for more money in the same cycle that their first application was, because why not just let every single person
Yeah.
who applied in the first round ask for 10% more?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just too many worms for me, but too big of a can of worms. But if there is like one or two applications and, you know, if I mean, that page 13 also has some language about if you couldn't make it in time for the actual deadline, you must explain why you couldn't. And that's a good thing to do, but leaving it open for the CPC to judge a new application, one or more, however you want to say that, but not an adjusted original application for that funding year. That's my only comment. Okay, Ed?
Just a couple of comments. You were asking why I hadn't said anything. I just feel that flexibility is a good thing. I think the other side was that procedure is a better thing. So, I mean, this is a traditional argument, I think, in most committees. I like to see consensus on everything, and I think this is the effort that Sue and John had put forth to come up with something that would meet both flexibility and would still be part of the procedure. So I thank them for their effort. I think I have to defend the housing group. We don't sit around hoping or thinking of ways to get, you know, as much money as possible. Unfortunately, we're in the situation where CPC funds are the major, you know, revenue source, because we've been waiting for six legislature sessions to get a transfer fast, you know, through, and that would give the trust much more flexibility to come up rapidly with when opportunities come up. So we are kind of holding our breath on the new funding, and we certainly appreciate any any extra effort that the CPC is able to do. And this year, I think we've come up. It's one of the reasons we didn't go overboard, is because we could, and now we have extra funds. So anyway, I just think that we need to not get too off from the original procedure that we have. I think an addendum maybe, or coda might be the way to go. It's it'd be nice if we could all of a sudden come up with extra money when an emergency happens, but we're just not set up that way. So I just
Thank
think,
you, Ed. And please don't take any
I'll
offense
go on
by,
and on if I'm allowed to, but not.
yeah, nobody meant to offend any housing. Of course, we all want to support housing.
I was just being a little sarcastic on that. I know that.
Okay, good. Even nice dry sarcasm. I like that. Sue, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, are you kidding? I do mean to offend the housing groups. Ed, you should be ashamed of yourselves if you aren't sitting around trying to think of ways to get more money, because it is desperately needed until housing policy changes in this country. So no, I actually originally raised my hand to say maybe it's inevitable after this year's situation, but particularly if we put in place a new policy, it will be encouraging groups to ask profligately for more money than they really think they need, and it will make more work for the CPC in giving haircuts to proposals when almost inevitably there just isn't enough money to go around, and we have to trim. That's all.
Well, I'm just as a response. We really do actually think about have we taken too much in the past? I mean, I'm sitting right in front of the Peter Buckley building, or at least
I was just yanking a chain.
That we got a lot of money from the CPC on that, and for several years afterwards, we just felt we shouldn't be asking for any money unless it was real emergencies.
Okay, Paul?
Yeah, Sue, Eve, I think you made an important suggestion, which is, I think it was considering only new applications as opposed to existing application asking for additional funds. That resonates with me, considering only new applications. I can see the rationale for existing applications, seeing there's more funds, but to keep it clean, assuming that the initial application was adequate and was based in reality, I would not extend any existing application into this policy. I'd accept new applications.
Thank you. I also think that the applicants who are meeting the original deadline put a lot of effort into their application to, prove that they have other funds that they requested, and to get people to back their projects, and to ask them, to offer a way for them to always come back, or often come back in case we have extra funds. It creates kind of a circus of our process in my mind. Oh, hey, Anne, what have you got to say?
Wait.
Oh, sorry.
Well,
Diane?
Diane first.
No, I just want you to know I agree. I mean, I think
Okay.
should not be asking existing applicants to expand their application.
Excellent. Thank you. Anne, what have you got?
Right. Well, if it's appropriate, I'm not sure if I should be a part of this or not, but
I want to hear from you.
Okay. I wish Nancy Nelson were here. She did call from Hawaii earlier today and shared some thoughts. And it occurred to me when we were speaking that Paul's suggestion every year to do better advertising about the availability of funds would help make this problem disappear, right? So that could be something that we could do proactively. We could each reach out to our constituents and, let everyone know when the deadline is, right? And just encourage people to get the applications in on time. And Paul also had another great suggestion. I think it was after that boot camp with the coalition, where many communities request letters of intent before the deadline. So that way you get like a preview of what could be coming, and you can, and that way you would know, right, that who's eligible, who's not eligible, but also if there is a surplus of funds based on what people are projecting. And that way you could do more advertising before the real deadline approaches rather than extending it, right? So
That's
you
an
know, do it
interesting
on
idea.
yeah.
I think Dr. Lori Hunter mentioned that our cycle is really off from the school cycle, and we may be really off from other fiscal years for other organizations and too. So I'm not sure how many letters of intent will get even earlier than our application deadline, but we can certainly, make that I don't know if we should make it mandatory either, because some people may be scrambling just to meet the deadline and then they didn't get their letter of intent in, and then we don't really know what we know until we know it anyway. If that makes sense. But anyway, I really like the idea of advertising. Diane, did you want to add something?
Yes, I want to add two things in relationship to that. First of all, Burton wrote a wonderful letter, again, which actually I understand Paul wrote. But at any rate, in the name of the CPC, a letter went out saying, please look for funding. But we're on a really hot topic, I think, which is that our deadline is so early that it is out of cycle with almost everybody. So when we say, let's reach out to the organizations we know, that should be a discussion we have in June, so that we reach out to organizations as early as July, when the new fiscal year starts, and tap them on their shoulder and remind them that such funds will be available, because people have a very short amount of time to meet our existing deadline. And I've always found it a little bit of a corset, actually, and have kind of wished it were about a month later. And I understand the constraints of doing that. But I think we already have put our community, by the time there's a vote in June, and then people have to be up and running already with the next application. I just think that, so if we want to do that, we have to do it practically, not quite now, but very soon to now.
Diane, what are the constraints of pushing a month? You said you understand the constraints of doing so.
Well, I don't understand the constraints. I would like to have it be a month later. I mean,
okay.
Just because I know the constraints are that we have so much to do, Eve. We have so many videos to make. We have to work with each application. When there are many, many applications, we have a lot of work to do. I mean, so it just becomes, and that falls on Ann's shoulders, that falls on the committee's shoulders, that falls on, the collective community shoulders. But if people had a little more give room, it would give organizations that are just kind of organizing, getting themselves going, a chance to look. Now that would throw things off, and it would make it quite a different process. And I haven't tried to play through whether we would have the time, and it would require us, before we made such a decision, to really sit down and think that through very carefully and systematically, and look at historically what kind of pressures were we under. But it is a fast and quick out of the gate for any horse that wants to enter this race. And so that's all.
I volunteer to discuss with Burton what it might do to push our deadline to October for the rest of our schedule, and then come back in April to discuss that further, because it is something to think about. I don't think we should think about it here without having really thought what you said.
Right. I mean, it really needs careful deliberation, but I mean, it seems to me it would be.
It needs input from Ann too.
That's what
exactly.
I said Ann and members of the committee historically. You're exactly right, John.
Okay, so let me take that up for next month. But Sue, did you have more comments on the?
Yes, just a small point, actually. We should be reaching out to the organizations we know, but I just want to put in a plug for being more broad-based, and instead of it being just who knows who, making sure that, I don't know, do we publish a very short thing in the Concord Journal? Would it be considered spam if something went out over the news and notices feed, something that everybody can subscribe to if they choose to?
You mean the bridge?
It was in the bridge.
You're right. Oh God, did I say the Journal? I apologize. I mean the bridge.
Well,
Yeah.
It was in the bridge, actually.
Oh, well, then that's certainly helpful.
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed it.
Go ahead, Paul.
I think a really good opportunity is the chair's breakfast. We have all the chairs of the committees meet every month, and I think that's a great way to let all the committees know, and all the derivatives of those committees, the committee chairs. So that's one way. Maybe it's not the only way, but that's one way we haven't done, although, yeah, we haven't done that, I don't think.
That's
I
a
was
good
really
idea.
thinking of the case of some random nonprofit who isn't plugged in to town government, doesn't know anybody on a committee, and will then feel, well, it's all just an inside club of who knows who. And, a lot more of that gets said than is valid, but it isn't always completely invalid.
True.
Yeah, thinking of the Concord Art application when they were so scared about coming to our committee to ask for funds.
That's true.
Yeah, it's a good point. Maybe we can think about other routes to let's all of us think about other ways to reach people and talk about that next month as well. That's a good idea. Okay, so first of all, I failed miserably to thank Sue and John. Thank you so much for working on this and for getting even this much down on paper. That's like a miracle as far as I'm concerned. This is really great. I hope we gave you some feedback, and if I could just lean on you a little bit further to take it to the next level, maybe edit what you've got, and then if you wouldn't mind, I mean, and I can help with this, take a look. Oh, perfect. Look at all those notes.
I have lots of notes, and if Sue's willing to continue our collaboration, I will try another draft, and she can then work it over, and we'll go back and forth just like we did to get to this one.
That would be great. Thank you, guys. Would you like help, or would you like to take a crack at thinking about where we can put this new policy?
Yeah, no,
Because we don't
that's
want
the
it to.
last, says right here, where
Oh,
to
is
put
that-
this.
Where to put this?
I-
Okay, got it. Excellent. Okay, great. That's a lot of progress, I think. Okay. So unless anybody has any other comments on our procedure or anything else, I will ask if anyone else in the room, Mary, Shelley, Liz, Linda, any of our lovely ladies, has anything else they want to add to this little discussion. Mary, anybody?
I'm good, thank you. Good discussion.
Okay, excellent. Okay, great. Burton will be back for our next meeting, and I'm sure he'll have lots of stuff to talk about then too. And did I forget anything? How am I doing here?
No, I think that's it. It was a short meeting.
I
Short
thought,
meeting.
Eve, I thought you did a wonderful job. You kept us right on track.
Good training.
Thanks, Diane. I
Good
have big
training.
shoes to fill, Diane, and those are your shoes.
No,
Okay.
you are really first rate.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, I hope you all have a great week.
Let me
Oh,
just say
John,
to
yes.
Sue, yeah, I don't have that language. If you want to send that to me, that you want to put in number 2, you wanted to essentially merge 2 and 5.
I'll
Right.
send you
into-
that. I'll
Yeah,
send you
send-
that, John.
Yeah, send
Yeah.
me that because it's very sensible language and it makes things a lot easier, a lot simpler.
Sounds good. Okay.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.